Greetings and welcome to another Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team video, where today I'm going to be going over the competitive tournament stats for the month of April for 2022. But before we get into things, please remember to like and subscribe as comment. Let me know what you thought of the stats and this video as a whole as well. What else you'd like to see for Kill Team. And remember, I've got a Discord you can check out for free in the episode description below, as well as a Patreon if you'd like to give me some more support. But yeah, today I'm going to go over the April tournament stats. I'm intending to do monthly tournament stats reviews at the end of every month. This was supposed to come out last week, a week ago. It's just only because I'm quite busy with work. So I apologize for the delay, but this is showing off once again. The stats me and Hot Sauce Teddy are doing we're refining as time goes on to try and get it the best it can be and implement stuff people have fed back. You know, because we're looking at, we've now been able to do stuff like individual kill team matchups to show not just how a kill team is winning, but how it's winning against all the kill teams in the game. So yeah, once again, all the thanks goes to Hot Sauce Teddy. Wouldn't be able to do this without him. And for the stats as well, we'll be going over the only flaws with the stats as I go with every stats video, because it's worth talking about the problems. BCP again, Corsairs are a bit iffy because Corsairs as a faction only got added to BCP like 2 weeks ago, even though it's been manually recorded in several events. So their stats are mixed with Craftworld Elder, and it's that other issue of players actually not using the appropriate faction keyword. So you have people playing, Pathfinders, but actually using the normal Tau keyword. It's problems like that. And obviously this is just only BCP, even though our sample size wholly has over 1,000 games since the Q2 update, or the Q1 data slate. But, you know, as I said, we will openly take non-BCP tournament results. You just have to get in contact with us and we can upload them. And if you want to just collaborate to help with the stats, because stats are a universal thing, just reach out. Always happy to help. But without further ado, let's get on with the April tournament stats. So for April 2022, as you can see, we have broken down the factions with total games, their win rate, and then meta representation. We've also added event victories this time and how many undefeated times a faction went. So at the moment, Harlequins for April are the top kill team. Still, so this is Void Dancers Harlequins. They have a total of 130 games with 38 players and an average win rate of 70%. Now, as I should have mentioned in the start, we're looking for a win rate of 45 to 55%. That is considered healthy. Anything that is 55 to 60 or 45 to 40 is a warning sign showing maybe they need some work to either be pushed up to 45 to 55% or they need to be toned down a little or watched in case they don't go above 60. Anything above 60 is bad. Anything below 40 is also bad, meaning those kill teams need lots of support to make them more competitively viable. But as you can see with the Harlequins, 10% meta representation, which is huge. They've had 8 event victories with 15 times undefeated. Then we can go to Orcs, which we'll kind of ignore. They do have a 57% win rate, but this is just Compendium Orcs with only 7 games, so it's not really reliable. Next, we have Novitiates, who have dropped from 63% to 56%. They've had 2 event victories with 3 undefeated. So they're still doing really well, but they've dropped off a lot. Now, I know the stats have changed going into May and, onwards, but I'll get to that after we've recapped all of this. Then we have the Warp Coven, who have had 43 games altogether. Not too bad for April with a 56% win rate, which is really good. They've had 2 event victories with 3 undefeated, so not bad. Pathfinders are actually going up a bit at 56% with 99 games and 1 event victory with 2 undefeated. Then the other ones are Wormblade at 52%, and then Deathwatch, Ecclesiarchy, and Hunter Cadre can kind of be ignored because of, 6 games and 4. Interestingly, the biggest changes have been with the Legionaries and the Veteran Guardsmen. So Veteran Guardsmen are still the most popular kill team for April anyway, but their win rate has actually dropped off a lot. They were more around 58%. They've dropped quite significantly to 47. Still fine, but 145 games. So maybe people are learning to adapt or people are dropping off, but it's an interesting change to notice. Then we've got the Legionary kill team, which has shot up in popularity and has actually got a pretty consistent win rate now at 48%. With 124 players, it's quickly rising to become one of the most popular factions. And it's not just because of chaos, but from who I've talked to, like everywhere, it's generally you've got a lot of Space Marine players just proxying to use the Legionary rules. Because, you know, it's difficult to proxy normal Space Marines with Warp Coven, but Legionary kill team is quite easy to do. So, based off of this, I think even the Phobos Marine team will be super popular just because Marines are a huge part of the game. And it's actually quite satisfactory and welcoming to see that their win rate is pretty decent, not as bad as I first forecast, because the Legionary have 1 event victory with 2 undefeated. Obviously, the Vet Guard have 3 event wins with 6 undefeated, but overall still pretty good. Then we've got Corsairs, who have a 45% win rate, so just on the lower end, but not too bad. And then, most notably, Hunterclade are the worst performing kill team. They do only have 24 games, but as a bespoke team, they're just not doing well. They desperately need some kind of help. Then you've got Space Marines at second to bottom as the worst Compendium team with 54 games, so a decent representation, but a win rate of 26%. But that's some interesting stats to see for April. Now here's the win rate broken down in a more clearly presentable form with the percentage. So as I said, Harlequins at the top, which we are counting as Void Dancers. And then on the right, we've got the meta representation. So Commandos are now the most popular kill team as per April, with Vet Guard now conceding to second place to the superior Orc power. Harlequins have shot up, so not only do they have the best win rate, they have the third highest representation, which is insane. They're doing far better than Vet Guard ever have. I don't think we've had a kill team with such high representation doing so well with such a high win rate since Custodes. So it's definitely one thing to watch out for. Pathfinders and Legionaries, the Legionary kill team once again doing really well. Huge popularity with a win rate of 47%, so really respectable. And then you've got Pathfinders. So the top 4, huge representation. Then you've got Wormblade, which are not surprising considering how popular they are as well. Talons of the Emperor, oddly, Custodes fighting their way forward as one of the few teams who actually do well against Harlequins, oddly. But their overall win rate in representation is only 48%, which isn't bad. It's decent. But we've got a clear breakdown. And as I said, Hunter Cadre, everyone's just playing Pathfinders. But then we've got Hunterclade at 1.95% representation with the lowest win rate. Just a bit of a shame to see. So this is the matchup matrix we've got. So we are now showing how each kill team is doing against each individual kill team in a matchup matrix from all the tournaments we're recording. So the stronger the color, the more games that matchup has. So for example, the Harlequin versus Commando matchup, tons of games. In another, it's only showing the percentage at the moment, but in another page we do have the amount of games played. But Harlequins are winning 84% of the games against Commandos, and that's because it's nearly solid blue. That's a considerable amount of games. Anything that's kind of faint, we can ignore. But as per the stats, for the win rates, notably just looking at the Harlequins, the only negative win rate in terms of the only kill team Harlequins aren't beating consistently is Talons of the Emperor with a 33% win rate. But it's very interesting to look at the matchup matrix, because I'll look at Novitiates because they have the second highest. So effectively, they have a 25% win rate against Death Guard. They haven't beaten Drukhari, haven't beaten Grey Knights, and have a 25% win rate against Harlequins, as well as against Legionary. But they're doing very well against everyone else with a mix of 50% to greater. So like they have a 100% win rate against Talon of the Emperors with a fair considerable amount of games, as well as Corsairs. But it's very interesting to look at. Pathfinders, they're actually struggling against Harlequins, interestingly enough. Even though they are on paper one of the better teams to deal with Harlequins, they only have a 45% win rate and actually have a 36% win rate against Legionary. So Legionary are oddly kicking the butt of the kill team that is probably their worst matchup, because Pathfinders massively outnumber them and have crazy gun damage on paper, but based on the tournament stats from all the games we're having, Legionary are comfortably beating Pathfinders, which is a shock. And even when we look at Vet Guard, with a 43% win rate against Legionary, Legionary are, according to the stats, comfortably beating their two hardest matchups. So it'd be interesting to see if this trend continues in terms of how it does in May, or if like in terms of the Vet Guard and Pathfinder start doing better against Legionary, or will the Legionary start doing better even more against those two kill teams? So as I said, I know it's a bit confusing because it's only percentages, but going forward, we will have the games mentioned as well. We've just showed it the percentage for now, but in our official stats, we include the games as well as the percentage win rates. So this is the percentage of games where versus undefeated. So how many games basically they are winning and how many games they are going undefeated. So we have Harlequins with a 32% of their games being undefeated. They're just up there with about 12% of their games. So they don't have the most representation because, as you said, Vet Guard and Commandos with only about 13% undefeated. But you know, you have Harlequins wide in the sky, shining down their greatness upon the other kill teams. But this is of the kill teams we consider are doing well in terms of the meta. So, you know, Pathfinders doing pretty, like, I just consider this all pretty healthy. This is bad. Like, I won't get too much into it, but obviously does not look good considering how represented they are. But Vet Guards and Commando are pretty even with their undefeated. And then, yeah, everyone else is pretty much fairly balanced with their undefeated. Oddly, Pathfinder's not doing as well as expected, but maybe the balanced data slate has actually done enough to tone them down. Whereas you've got Death Guard, Warp Cover, Novitiates, and Wormblade doing quite well in terms of getting higher undefeated games based on the percentage of games they're playing. So this is a new stat as well. So this is points differential. So this is showing how many points on average a kill team is scoring when they win, as well as how many points they are conceding when they lose. So while it's not an while it's not a wholly accurate measure of balance, it's an interesting snapshot to see how kill teams are performing when they win. So obviously we've got Drukhari, which don't have the greatest representation, but when they win, they are generally scoring 10 points more than their opponent, which is quite considerable, along with Craft Worlds. But the main problem with Craft Worlds, it's mixed with Void Dancers, but that's still decent. Obviously, the stronger the color, the more games are involved. So Pathfinders are generally have like nearly 9 points ahead when they win, and the same for Harlequins. Considering these are a lot of games, about 120 for the Pathfinders, and I think 170 for the Harlequins. It's a lot. Like, that's a consistent way to win. Even Vet Guard are doing pretty well with 9 points. I think the most interesting one with the narrowest wins, probably it is the Novitiates, with only winning by 6 or more victory points compared to their opponents when they win, which is 6 points is still a huge lead, but it's not as much as 9 that we are seeing with the other performing kill teams. Even Legionary are doing pretty well, scoring on average 8 points more than their opponent when they win. Now, when they lose, we have Orcs scoring the most when they lose with nearly 13 points, but that's they're only like 4 games, so it's not really that good to show. But even then, when you've got Harlequins, it's not the points they've scored, how many points they're behind. So when Grey Knights lose, they're only about 5 points behind the winner. Even Harlequins and Commandos and Novitiates, all about 7, even Pathfinders as well. So they're not doing as bad as they lose compared to when they win. Obviously, when these kill teams win, they're doing a lot better. But when they lose, they're still conceding a decent amount of points, but not as much as you'd expect, showing those games are still quite tight. And then, yeah, as it goes down, you've got basically the Compendium teams leading the way in terms of losses, but as it should be expected. Oddly, Hunterclade have the best conceding score when they lose for a bespoke team, but that's only out of 24 games. So I fear it would be a lot worse. But it is interesting to show that when the Hunterclade are losing, it's only by 6 points, which isn't really much. So there are quite narrow games, but when they win, they are winning by less. So it's just showing that Hunterclade need help. So these are the stats with all the Compendium teams removed. People may be upset by this because I should have mentioned this in the start as well, but we're also following the balanced data slate of removing kill teams that Games Workshop says you shouldn't play in competitive. But as we can see, Harlequins, they're still at the top for Bespoke. Hunterclade at the lowest. But the average win rate has kind of dropped if we remove all the Compendium results. So from what we can see, we put Craftworld because it's just... We are counting Craftworld and Corsairs as mixed results. We can't combine them because there are independently recorded Corsair results. So we've had to compromise. So this is the only problem with the Eldar stats. But generally, removing the Compendium teams, Harlequins are still on a 70% win rate. This is just against other bespoke teams. Novitiates are doing actually a little bit better at 57%. Pathfinders have a 50% win rate against bespoke teams, whereas Wyrmblade have a slightly better 52%. Notably, Legionary are 46%, which is fine, whereas Vet Guard are starting to do a lot worse against bespoke teams at 41%. Even Commandos as well, dropping to 38%. Hunterclade are even worse win rate at 37%, but it's interesting to note the change with the Commandos and Vet Guard. Now, we can't really go back and do this for older stats, but it would have been interesting to see how the addition of more bespoke teams has affected the win rate of the Vet Guard and Commandos. But as we can see, with the addition of more bespoke teams, the first bespoke teams aren't actually doing that well. So, but even the newest ones, excluding Harlequins, let's ignore the Harlequin 70% win rate. We all know what to make from that. It's not necessarily the newest being the best, but the newer teams are all close to each other. The only worrying one is Novitiates because that's above 57%, but generally all the bespoke teams are doing pretty well against each other. So in the matchup win rates, like Pathfinders have a 100% win rate against Craftworlds, Hunterclade, whereas they actually drop off to a 25% win rate against Novitiates, 36% against Legionary, and then just 50% in general with 40% against Wyrmblade, which is actually quite a difficult matchup. And then we'll look at Harlequins. So they have a 50% matchup against Corsairs, 75% against Craftworlds, 50% win rate against themselves, 100 against the Hunterclades, 84% against Commandos, 67% against Legionary, 75 against Novitiates, 55 against Pathfinders, 67 against Warp Coven, and 87% win rate against Vet Guard, with a 63% against Wyrmblade. The most shocking for me is definitely the Vet Guard, and even the not Novitiates, the Pathfinders, who are, as I said, they're the two teams who should be able to deal with them the best, but from the stats, they clearly aren't. So, but even if we look at Legionary, so they're not doing well against Eldar, 25 and 50%, 20% win rate against Harlequins, which is painful. They oddly have a 0% win rate against Hunterclade, but there's not many games there. 50% against Commandos, which is not surprising. 50% win rate against themselves, very close to 43, well, close to 50 with a 43% win rate against Novitiates, doing well against Pathfinders, as I said, with a 64%, 25% win rate against Warp Coven, so they're actually struggling against the first Chaos Space Marine team, and a 57% win rate against Vet Guard, with another middling one against Wyrmblade. So oddly, they're doing really well also against Pathfinders and Vet Guard. So it's an interesting thing to note here that it's supported not just in general, but with the Compendium teams only. And here is the win rate for what we consider the top tier factions over time. So obviously we have the yellow at Harlequins, who started at technically 100% win rate, but realistically 87%. So it's dropped to 73%. So this is actually including lives. It's a week by week thing. So this is how they're doing first week of April, like going into April, first, second, third, and fourth week. So end of March, they had an 87% win rate, dropping to 73%, then 67%, then 69%, which is very nice. And it's now dropped off to 33%. But I think that week there was like only 1 or 2 events that used Harlequins. and none of them placed really well. But it's interesting to note that's on a downward trend. Pathfinders have actually been quite stable, but dipping again towards the end of the month, whereas Novitiates started really bad at 70%, jumped to 64%, dropped back down to 33%, and have risen to 70%. So they're really all over the place, but have shot up again, because remember, they were about 63% before going into April. And then Vetguard, despite their averagely middling performance getting worse towards the end of the month, they've shot up again to 64%. So going into May, we should see Harlequin's downtrend along with Pathfinders, but Vetguard and Novitiate are seemingly rising. So it'll be interesting to see if those two kill teams can maintain their win rates, or will they drop down, whereas Pathfinders and Harlequins rise up again. But as I said, we'll have to wait till the end of May. And here's just a list of events we've used. So these are effectively all the events for April, and we've included how many players as well as how many number of rounds. We have not included any events that have had less than 8 players, and we have also had the sad situation where we're getting events where either tournament organizers only post the first round or don't post the final round results, or they keep a lot of stuff hidden so we can't actually sample it for, you know, actual event results, which is up to the TO at the end of the day. Stats don't have to be public, but this is all the stuff we're using. A lot of it is Spanish, because the Spanish scene has the most active stuff, but we've got a few London and, well, UK events as well as a lot of American events as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the stats for April. As we can see, Harlequins are doing very, very well, but Novitiates have kind of dipped up and dipped back again. Shoutouts to Legionary, who are doing surprisingly well and are becoming one of the most popular factions in the game. I will spoil a bit going into May. Harlequins are dropping off a little bit. They are no longer 70%, but they're still mid-60. But they are now narrowly being followed by the Novitiates, who are climbing up in terms of win rates. So both factions are still kind of worrying. Harlequins are slowly downtrending, but even on the bad weeks that they have, it's only bringing them just to a mid 60% win rate. It's not dropping them below 60, that's what we've found, unless we do like a week by week thing. In general, they're still doing really, really well. We've now got 1,000 games as of now for mid-May, and Harlequins are now the second most popular faction with nearly over 220 games nearly, and they have like a 65% win rate. Legionary are now, I believe, the most popular faction with about a 46% win rate, I think, or it's Commandos is one of those two. But Legionary are doing really well, and as I said, I believe that's because you've got a lot of Space Marine players in general just proxying the Legionary rules. So gonna have to eat my hat. Probably it looks like I was completely wrong about the power level for Legionary, but as I said, we'll interesting to see how that progresses with all of May. So I won't talk about balance, because I think I want to leave the stats as just pure stats. We'll just leave the subjectiveness of balance behind. I think the only balance we need to talk about are the poor Hunter Clades, who are just doing worse and worse as the month goes on. Now, I think they are deserving of buffs, but I just don't want them in a situation where their buffs are becoming broken, because I think they're a very easy kill team to break with buffing. But they need some kind of help. But another thing that we found interesting, as I said, when we were looking at the compendium, I mean, the bespoke only win rates, is how Vetguard and Commandos are actually starting to struggle against the other bespoke teams. And this is very interesting, considering especially how Commandos are just a solid kill team, but Vetguard are usually a lot of players' top kill team in the game. So it's very interesting that it's not being reflected in the stats, considering we've now got a decently large sample size. But I think overall it's very interesting. The Compendium teams are still doing pretty well, still always very popular, but slowly downtrending. But I'll leave that kind of snapshot for when we do like quarterly reviews, because you can get a better picture of that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Please like and subscribe and comment. Let me know what you think of the video. It'd be really interesting to hear what people have about the thought of the stats. What do you think of balance and feedback? What other stuff would you like us to look at that we can do reasonably well within the limits of BCP stat recording? Because we'd always be happy to help. And I probably will do this as an article. So if you want to look at the images instead of just snapshotting them as screenshots, I should have it as an article that you can use down in the episode description below. But yeah, I also have a Discord if you want to check it out, as well as a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. So I'll just go and thank my patrons. So for my Adepts of the Crits, I have Christopher, Kenzie, Terun, Michael, and Theodore. And then for my Veterans of the Crits, I have Samja and Confucius. So thanks for all your support. It really helps whatever you give. So if you can, please help me feedback and support the channel. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the stats. I'll be back with more Kill Team videos soon. But yeah, I'd be interested to see how people think of me doing like monthly stats reports, because I think it's very interesting to see how stats evolve. I would prefer to do it quarterly because you get a better change. I don't think Kill Team has enough games to do it weekly yet, like you can with 40k and Sigmar. But monthly we can definitely do, and let me know what you think. Just love to hear people's feedback. So remember, until next time, no matter what the crits say, if you're playing Hunter Clades, you are truly the best in the game, and we appreciate your dedication to such a faction that you deeply love and care about.